He's the president of Postal Advocate Incorporated, the only mail audit and recovery firm in the U.S. and Canada. We manage a portfolio of over 160,000 pieces of mailing equipment for the largest U.S. companies. Adam speaks and teaches nationally on mail savings and industry trends. He's also a former industry co-chair of the Boston Postal Customer Council and Mail Systems Management Association. He has CMDSS and MDC certifications. Adam is a featured writer for Mailing Systems Technology magazine, and he works for one of the largest mailing vendors for over 17 years. He was the director of national sales for Presort tabletop inserts, addressing hardware and software and green offerings, and he was one of the top 5 account managers nationally, working with some of the largest accounts. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Michaela. So today we're going to talk about enterprise mail and shipping strategies for 2022. We're going to tie into the rate increases for all carriers. They're all going up, and they all went up actually at the beginning of the month. We're going to talk about savings areas to consider to reduce the impact of these increases, and there are a lot of them. Details of the accessorial charges and what you need to know. Rate shopping savings opportunities. Visibility, we find this is the key to your mailing and shipping portfolio. Without visibility, you can't make good decisions. And then throughout this entire thing, we're going to come up with best practices and tips. So the rate increase happens for all carriers. Both UPS and FedEx announced they're having a 5.9% increase, but this is overall. Based on multiple factors, the increase could be significantly higher. We're going to show you how those rate increases impacted things. The USPS stated that their priority mail rates were going up 2.7%, but again, this is overall. There are differences in it. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on. First off is we're in an area of really high inflation, as we're talking about. The carriers have the ability, because of inflation, to raise rates at higher levels. There are supply chain shortages. There are people that are being out. There's a specific need for us to ship more and more goods to homes, putting people in, putting the carriers in a much higher leverage position to be able to raise rates and give less discounts. And we're going to talk about that. And these are the reasons that we can expect to see higher rate increases in the future. The postal rate increase that's happening is on their competitive rates. So the post office breaks out their rates into 2 main classes. They're basically their non-competitive rates, which are things that they don't have any competition with, things like letters, flats, market dominant is what they call that. And then they have their competitive rates, which competes directly with UPS and FedEx. We had the largest increase in the market dominant rates at the end of August of last year. It was almost 8 to 10% increase over the largest classes. We're not having a rate increase on the market dominant now, but we will again in June or July. The post office has stated they're going to start having basically 2 rate increases per year going forward. So with all of this, we can expect the carriers to raise rates at higher levels. It's our job to come up with strategies where we can reduce these costs. This chart looks busy, but let's explain the differences of it. The things in yellow are areas where the increase exceeded the UPS and FedEx's 5.9% increase that they listed, and the post office's 2.7% increase. We break things down into these categories for the following reasons. First is by type of service level. When are you getting the item delivered? 8:30, 10:30, next day for end of day service. Your 2-day, there are 2 options: early, AM service, or 2-day end of day. 3-day service, or ground, and ground could be 1 to 5 day based on how far it's going throughout the country. Next, we look at weights. Most packages, the highest volume of packages in the United States are in the 1 to 10 pound range. And so 1 to 10 pounds are all of your documents, which are important for all the financial institutions and people who are sending overnights and letter documents throughout the country. Also your lightweight parcel, which is the fastest growth segment of the parcel industry. Then we look at the 11 to 25, sort of that mid-tier of weights, and then the 26 to 150. And we also look at zones. So zones 2 through 4 are things going, less than halfway throughout the country. Those zones 5 through 8 are the things going to farther places throughout the country. So when you look at that, the biggest growth area in packages is lightweight items, less than 10 pounds, going to local zones 2 through 4. And we can see that those are having some of the highest rates. Next day, 10:30, you can see from UPS and FedEx are both going up 7.4% versus the items going farther away, which are only going up 6%. We see the same thing with next day AM. We see much higher rates for the local zones than the heavier zones. Than the farther zones. But you can see across the board, we're seeing next day AM and next day end of day and 2-day AM are getting much higher average rates than their averages. 2-day is going down a little bit. 3-day is getting killed at basically 10%. And the lightweight items going for ground, which are the items that we're making the biggest comparisons against the Postal Service and overnight letters, are going up at 7%, making ground in some cases less competitive than it was. So you can see that this is happening. The rate structures of both carriers, the tables that these rates are based off of for UPS and FedEx are very similar. So it's the biggest difference is the discount percentage that you're able to negotiate from each. So those are going to be your biggest differences between UPS and FedEx. And these percentage rate increases are so similar that you can see that. When we talk about the post office, Priority Mail Express is having much higher rate increases at 5 to 13% versus over the 2.7%. Priority Mail, the lightweight local zones are going up at the highest amount in the lightweight segment at 3%. We're seeing a bit of a dip of rates in the 11 to 25, and then higher rates in the 25 to 150. The reason for that we think that we're seeing this is the post office is mainly competitive against UPS and FedEx in the lightweight segment, the 1 to 10 pound segment, going to residents. That's their post office's #1 segment of growth. They're increasing rates there, but they know at about 11 pounds, it stops being as competitive. So they're trying to lower rates against UPS and FedEx to become more competitive there. And in their heavier weight items, they're increasing it because if you're sending to those weights to the post office, there's probably a reason. When you're rating an item, there are several factors to consider, and these are them probably in order of importance. The service level based on the delivery objective. When do you need the item to get there? The zone it's going to, distance away from it's being sent. So zone 2 is your local, zone 8 is coast to coast. It's a way of thinking about it. The weight of the item, how heavy is it? The dimensions, and we'll talk more about dimensions and how you calculate that, because there's a whole dimensional rating way that things have to happen. Minimum service fees, no matter what your discount states, there's a minimum floor that is inside your contract that the carrier says you cannot go beneath, and that has a huge impact on your rates. Accessorial charges, all the other fees, the residential delivery, the delivery area surcharges, the additional handlings, all those things are accessorial fees, making up a much bigger share of your packages. And then fuel surcharges. Fuel surcharges, no matter what fuel goes to, if fuel becomes $1 a gallon, there will still be fuel surcharges. Like it's just, since they started in their existence, we haven't seen them ever go away. Right now, they're in the 9 to 12% range. So when you're looking at this, there's a lot of things you have to consider when you're making these types of comparisons. So these are the basic rate structures, the list prices of packages with UPS and FedEx. Basically, and we're looking at lightweight items because it's the most common area that is for people to compare. And so you can see there's different rates for the letter rates in some cases than there is for the 1 pound, especially for your overnight areas. And in some cases with overnights, it's better to be using the carrier's packaging for your letter documents because the rate's significantly better for letters than if you use your own packaging. So you can see 1 day, you can look at the delivery objectives, overnight, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, ground. To a local zone, ground is guaranteed next day. If it's going halfway across the country, it's 2 to 3 days. And if it's going coast to coast, excuse me, it should be 5 days if it's going coast to coast. That's a typo. So when you're looking at this, there's a lot to make comparisons about. Although the post office has lower rates, as you can see, than the list prices, most customers get large discounts. So, and maybe you're getting a 50% discount or 60 or 70% discount based on your volumes. That can make it less than the post office. But do you have to calculate residential fees at $5.35, delivery area surcharges at $3.55 to $6.50? Is it delivered? Does it need to be delivered on a Saturday where the post office doesn't charge for it, but the private carriers charge $16? Was there a mistake in the address, which was $18 to $19.50? So all these things have to be considered. That makes it difficult for people to make sure that they're optimizing the right cost. We're going to go through some examples of this and show you what things you need to consider when making the proper carrier choices. So let's talk about a ground residential. You're sending a 1 pound item to a residence. It's going zone 5, which is sort of halfway through the country. It's going to be delivered in 3 days, and the rate is $11. The list price is $11.13, and you get a 60% discount on your client contract. The rate with that discount is $4.45, but you don't get that rate because inside your contract, you have a minimum service charge that says your minimum floor for a ground shipment, no matter what the discount is $7. And that discount percent and that minimum service charge is going to vary on a client by client basis. Well, let's use $7 as the example here. You get a fuel surcharge of 84 cents, a residential fee of $5.20 because it's going to a residence, and it's a rural zip code. You get a $4.80 delivery area surcharge. That ground shipment is now $17.84. The Postal Service, which will get it there in the same 2 to 3 days, potentially even faster than ground service, will be $8.12. You don't get a discount. There's no minimum service fee. The rate is $8.12. There's no fuel. There's no residential. There's no delivery area surcharge. The rate's $8.12, and it's $9.72 less. So even though the ground charge was $7, when you factored fuel at $7.84 plus the extra $10 in the residential and delivery area surcharges, it makes the post office much less expensive. If this item was just going to a business and it was in a densely populated area, Postal Service would have been a better bet. I mean, UPS or FedEx would have been a better bet. But residential is the fastest segment of delivery, and you don't always know which of these are rural residents, rural areas that add that extra charge. Let's look at another example. You're sending documents, you're sending it next day air. You're sending it next day air, and it's going to zone 2. So you're sending it overnight to someone within 150, 250 miles. The expected delivery is next day. It's $27.48. The discount is 75%. You have a 75% discount with your contract. The rate's $6.87. But you can't get the $6.87 because your minimum service charge in your contract is $11, negating $4.13 of your discount. Fuel's $1.32. The total charge is $12.32. This is like a real life example from one of our customers. If they sent it ground through using the same carrier to the ground service, it's guaranteed delivery to zone 2. The rate's $9.36. They get a slightly lower discount on their ground at 60%. The $7 is the minimum service charge plus fuel. It's $7.84. It's a $4.48 savings using the same carrier, getting the same delivery objective, just choosing a different service offering. And these are the ways that you can offset the types of increases that are inevitable that we're going to expect from the carriers. Dimensional rates. UPS and FedEx will dimensionally rate items starting at about a 6-inch cube. So if you think of a box that's 6 by 6 by 6, anything bigger than that gets dimensionally rated. The formula is length times width times height divided by 139. UPS does not dimensionally rate items until the length times width times height is greater than 1728 or 1 cubic foot. So instead of a 6 by 6 item by 6, it's got to be 12 by 12 by 12 for the post office to dimensionally rate. And instead of dividing it by 139, they divide it by a higher number of 166, making them have lower calculated weights. So the bottom line is the post office on dimensionally rated items on smaller items won't dimensionally rate where UPS and FedEx will. And on bigger items, the post office will always have a lower calculated weight because they're dividing it by 166 instead of 139. So here's real life examples. 6 by 6 by 6 box. The actual weight's 1 pound. UPS and FedEx rate that at a 2 pound box, where the post office rates it at the 1 pound rate. It's a 1 pound difference. 12 by 12 by 12. If the actual weight's 4 pounds, UPS and FedEx charge it at a 13 pound rate. The difference is 9 pounds. 9 pounds adds a huge difference in the base rate table, no matter what your discount is. 16 by 16 by 16, you can see it's a 5 pound difference. 20 by 20 by 20 is a 6 pound difference. Doesn't matter what the weight, there will be a difference in the weight that you're calculating the rate based off that can make the post office more competitive when you need to dimensionally rate an item. Accessorial fees. 20 to 30% of your bill is made up of accessorial charges, also called value-added services. The rates of these fees have gone up considerably and need to be factored. This chart below shows a subset of what we view as some of the most common fees, and we highlight these because the post office does not charge for them and can make certain transactions less money through the postal service. We talked about it. Residential delivery. Residential delivery is the #1 most common additional accessorial charge that you can expect on your bills. People are working from home. People, are working in different places. You're going to expect to see more residential surcharges on bills in the future that the post office doesn't charge. It went up 7% over last year, 535. You can see the rates for UPS and FedEx. And you can see it for whether it's air or ground, you can see the rates have gone up considerably, 7 to 9%. Delivery area surcharge. Delivery area surcharge is items going, if you're sending an item, it doesn't matter whether it's commercial or residential, to one of 22,000 zip codes in the country. 61% of all zip codes in the United States will be assessed a delivery area surcharge. These zip codes are viewed as less densely populated areas where the carrier's charges $340 to $650 added to the cost of the parcel because it's going to one of those zip codes. So these are things that you want to be able to calculate up front. The post office doesn't charge for this service. All of these fees have gone up 9 to 12% over the last year, as you can see, and makes the post office more sense to compare the post office in specific situations. Saturday delivery, address corrections, you can see $16 and $18, as you can see below. Address validation. Address validation is a big one. The carriers charge $18 for address validation. Oftentimes, the same address is charged this fee over and over again because nobody does anything with it. People just keep sending to the same address that they have linked in their campus ship system or in FedEx.com, and they keep getting the charges, and no one in the central office who gets the bill is communicating down to the locations to make sure that they're making the changes in their database. We find that the best process is to set up a process to communicate the address changes with the senders to make sure there are changes made to their databases for the future. If possible, work towards having centralized office databases for internal packages. Some of this happens because you're sending internal packages, to offices or headquarters where people are typing in the wrong addresses. Communicate where people are having these address changes so people know that they should be making these changes for themselves. Monitor the change in behavior over time through reports and internal communications. This is a real life example from a client, $19,000 of address changes. This isn't even an excessive one. This is kind of more of a normal one for a medium to large company, where you can see that they had, of the 1,058 address corrections that they had that year, look at the quantity of address corrections. They were to the same address 2, 3, 4, 5, 13, 14 times to the same address, being charged the same fee over and over and over again. Like, these can be avoided with proper management. Some additional address correction, additional accessorial fees. There are lots of different fees. You can see how the rates go up. We're going to send out a copy of this presentation so you'll have the details on these. Some areas to point out are the pickup charges. If you're having pickup at every office every day, the question is, or multiple times a week, do they have the volume to justify the pickup charges? Because in some areas, the pickup charges are going up significantly. So now let's talk about the difference between carrier-provided systems versus multi-carrier shipping systems. So carrier-provided systems are great. They're convenient. The carriers give them for free. UPS Campus Ship, FedEx.com, UPS.com are the most common things that we see people use. And these are probably the most common things that you'll see in shipping rooms throughout the country, and or people who are desktop mailers. People who are sending overnight documents in a large organization, or they're sending shipments to clients and things like that, but they're spreading out where they send them versus from a main shipping hub. People will use free carrier-provided tools. These are, they're great for their convenience factors. They're designed to make it easier for you to ship within that carrier. But the best way to reduce expenses is to have ways to compare the rates across multiple carriers and service levels at the point of shipment, which the carrier-provided systems just don't do well. You need to have the right tools in place to help your end users make the best decision on a package-by-package basis, because as we saw from the previous slides, there are too many factors to make unilateral decisions about how we ship. Most of the people also who are making these shipping decisions, aren't necessarily in a traffic department or an educated professional full-time shipper. In often cases in organizations, these are casual users who go onto the app, aren't very well trained in it, make quick decisions, don't exactly know what they're doing, and ship items out. So that's why multi-carrier shipping systems can provide the tools that your users need to make better decisions at that point of shipment. So let's talk about the different carriers. Comparing costs across multiple carriers. Free carrier provided systems only have it for that particular carrier. Multi-carrier shipping systems can compare UPS, FedEx, DHL, USPS, LTL, and courier shipments all on the same platform. 4 to 12% savings by rate shopping. Also, it gives increased carrier leverage in negotiations. So let's say that you want to negotiate your FedEx or your UPS contract. You're using free carrier provided systems for all your users throughout the country. It is very difficult for you to think that you're going to switch from one carrier to the other and retrain all your users on a new platform and do that at the flick of a switch. That is a much bigger effort, and the carriers know it. With a multi-carrier shipping system, you instantly just change the rates in which you show and make sure that envelopes and packaging material is provided out to your locations, and you can make that switch, giving you more leverage in carrier negotiations. Also, because you now have a way to compare rates, you can see in which carrier offers a better rate and gear your people to make those decisions. Compare air to ground on the same screen. The carrier provided systems have air rates and they have ground rates, but they don't show them in the same place. So in order for you to, so they'll show you your air rates for the items that you want to send based on how you want to do it. And you can click on a button and get into a different place in the system and see the ground rates, but they will not show them to you right next to each other. Most people don't do that step, don't think about it, aren't trained on which things that they would need to be. Multi-carrier systems will show you those things on the same screen so you can make the decision. If it's an overnight item and it's in local zones, it's going to show you that the ground rate will get there at the same time, and you can pick that and get the savings. If it's a 2-day or 3-day item that is going, through air shipments, it'll show you the ground could provide faster delivery at lower costs. Automatically flag as residential delivery. So when you're shipping through a carrier provided system, you have to tell the system if it's a residential or not. The system won't say it for you. With some multi-carrier systems, they have residential indicators. They basically have a database of every residential address in the entire country. And as you type in that address, it knows that's a residential address, and it will force the flag of it being a residential charge. Otherwise, what happens is you're comparing the rate based on the commercial rate. It's not adding the extra $5 to the charge, and you may not be making the best decision on how to send that item. Multi-carrier systems can make those calculations for you. Ability to process USPS priority mail and first class parcel. Obviously, free carrier systems can't do that. Multi-carrier systems can. Post office is best for lightweight items going to residents or rural zip codes. Prices start at $3. First class parcel rates, or anything less than 16 ounces, gets rates that are rated by the ounce versus every other package with UPS and FedEx or even priority mail is rated by the pound. And those rates start at around $3. It's one of the golden gems of the Postal Service, is being able to ship something first class parcel, and it's their fastest growth segment in their parcel business. Single carrier provided systems can't do that. Post office stamps. What we find in organizations, especially with people working from home, is they don't have, or working in small offices where there's no metering technology, is they don't have the ability to send anything other than UPS or FedEx. All that they have is ups.com or Campus Ship or FedEx.com for them to send anything out. And so they do it that way. So they're sending a $10 item out when frankly there was no urgency to its delivery. Printing a 53-cent stamp would have been fine for it to get there in 2 to 3 days, but they don't have the ability to do that. Some multi-carrier systems have the ability to print postage stamps on the same platform, so you can gear people to making those decisions for items that don't have the urgency. Not everything has to be there overnight. If you look at most organizations' carrier bills who aren't shipping parcel in an e-commerce model, we find 70 to 90% of everything they send goes overnight because that's how they've always done it. Not everything has that level of urgency. USPS certified mail capabilities. Certified mail are for items that you need to have proof that the person signed for that item, because if you're doing a policy cancellation or some document that you have to prove in a court of law, you need to prove that they physically got it and they signed for it. Some systems have the ability to do certified mail processing on the same multi-carrier platform. Saves $1.25 because you can produce an electronic return receipt, and it stores the history for up to 7 years, so it could be a central repository for certified mail across the organization. And then most importantly, at least for a lot of our clients who are large organizations, is single sign-on capability. When people use carrier provided systems, they have to someone has to manage usernames and passwords. Either if it's a centralized area, someone has to make sure that people are added and that password resets are done and all that stuff is managed, which is time consuming. But then what happens when someone is no longer employed? Oftentimes with free carrier provided systems, no one ever cleans that up. Nobody ever goes to the database and says, let me get rid of all these people who are no longer employed. Those people who are no longer employed, who are not removed from your carrier provided systems, still have the ability to ship. And so with single sign-on, you can make it very easy. Users don't have to remember usernames and passwords to get in. But most importantly, when they're no longer employed, they're automatically kicked out and have no access to be able to ship anymore. It's a huge benefit. Very few organizations manage their users in single carrier provided systems, and users who have been out of companies for years are still listed in them because no one ever purges the databases. And it's certainly not on any sort of real-time basis. So as you can see, there's lots of value add for multi-carrier systems and providing you the leverage and the tools to make shipping decisions that can reduce costs. Multi-carrier systems, the key to making sure that they work and they provide the savings is the central administration. It's the key to success. So with users spread out to different locations, working remotely and with different needs, in order to implement these systems, you need to make sure that you have the things involved below to have success. So someone needs to define the requirements of the system, making sure that it's set up exactly for the needs, including profiles of the users, what things you want people to be able to see, like what shows up on each individual person's screen. The system needs to be implemented with the vendor. Someone needs to project manage that to make sure that works from the client side. There needs to be a training plan in place. You need to onboard users. You have to manage the user's access. Even with single sign-on, you have to make sure people are linked to the right locations and profiles. Case and use issue management. The most important thing that is a place that most organizations fall on. When there is an issue, when someone wants to know how to do something, when they're having problems accessing the tool, knowing what ways to ship, who do they go to for support? The last thing you want them doing is calling UPS or FedEx on their own for each person, because they won't get proper responses. You need someone inside your organization or a third. This is what we're doing for clients to help manage these issues, not just to manage the issue, but to report on those issues and to develop frequently asked questions guides to streamline so people don't have to call up in the future, and to have education around those things so you can make sure that people are doing things better. We need to have reporting on the key metrics of the systems. What are the reasons you got that system in the first place? And then reporting on how the success is towards those metrics, quantifying the savings the system's implementing, and then expanding and promoting usage to different groups. Most of the time, people don't launch to an entire company at once. They'll do group after group. They'll do like specific divisions, like regions, things like that, and they'll expand, as they have, people, committed to the program, and they'll have a certain onboarding process. All these things take someone to manage. We have found that we're doing this sort of oversight and management for our clients because we think that this is the future of mail and parcel. The future of mail and parcel is not people having like individual pieces of technology from carriers or from post office or like postage meters everywhere. It's moving people to cloud-based offerings where they can do everything that they need. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be this sort of support model in place. We've developed this support model along with a case management program. And what we find is when people, when we're managing this for clients, they land on a dashboard and they say, what type of issue are we having? What type of issue do we need? They put in their credentials of who they are, and then we send out a case number automatically to them. And then we have an agent directly follow up with them. And then we have an email closure process to make sure that they're satisfied with the case results. And then we report on the details of all those cases. And we produce frequently asked questions guides and education around making sure that those cases for those same issues don't keep reoccurring throughout the organization. So it's designed to make the process better. And without this type of infrastructure, it makes it very difficult to ensure the success of the program and that users are satisfied. Best practices. Enterprise options should be used wherever possible to give you room to grow and expand. The last thing you want is individual different systems used in different parts of the organization. Analysis needs to be done to justify these solutions, which involves getting the details of the core data of the current applications. What are mail volumes, package spends? What are the savings areas that are the most important? Support may be needed on implementation and promoting use inside your organization, the change management aspects that I'm sure everybody knows about. But with the right support in place, this can be done very easily. Ongoing support may need to be managed, the administration aspects of the system that we talked about, first responder to questions, user administration, reporting of activities and spends, validating the bills and the chargebacks are managed. The analysis. The only way to see if these solutions make sense is to do a detailed analysis of the current spends. There are either numbers that prove that this makes sense or there are numbers that prove it doesn't. Here's the process that we do in analyzing this. We need the details of the current spends, including shipping spends. So what we look for is 1 to 6 months of UPS or FedEx shipping details. And this should include line item details, including the tracking numbers, should include the accessorial charges. Usually, if you can't pull this yourself, you can ask your carrier, your client representative from your carrier for an export of a certain period of shipping. The purpose of doing this is to be able to dual rate what the package was sent out at versus the optimum way that it could have been sent out if people had the right tools to make that decision. What are the air to ground compares where you would have gotten the same rates? What are the post office rates for those same items? Now, there's no reason to compare next day air to the postal service because most people aren't going to move their stuff to post office express mail. It's too expensive. But the priority and first class parcel for your 2-day, 3-day, and ground shipments are viable comparisons that should be made because you're going to get the same delivery objectives. What are the accessorial fees that you're spending on those things that could be eliminated, including fuel? Mailing equipment and postage, any current mailing provided reports that are available, accounts payable exports from the key vendor names, including the Postal Service. We ask for a limited, from that export accounts payable detail, we ask for a limited list of PDF invoices, and then we log that information on the vendor's websites to gain full detail of the mail and shipping spends. Are there any current issues and challenges? What are those? And then from this detail, we can typically turn it around in 2 to 3 weeks at no charge or obligation to show you what are the savings inside your organization through having these types of tools and support. In summary, prices are going to keep going up at faster rates with the growth in the shipping space and limited number of suppliers. There's 3 main suppliers in the shipping space. Let's think about it. In the growth that we have had in carriers, it's grown like at 10+% per year, and it's going to keep growing as we have more of us working from home. There's only 3 main providers. Amazon is going to become a more major provider, in the future, but right now they're only supporting packages that are generated from their platform, from their enterprise. In the future, we expect Amazon to become a carrier that you're going to be rate shopping against. They could pick up packages from any business. Prices are tied to the consumer price index, inflation, which is growing rapidly. We had, I don't know the exact numbers, but we had 6 or 7% inflation, like 6 or 7% inflation last year. The post office rates are tied to the consumer price index, which is the inflation metric. UPS and FedEx will raise rates at similar levels. There are too many factors in calculating a shipping price to rely on only free carrier provided solutions. You're going to get, with that, the carrier just has more ways to be able to increase your rates because they know you have fewer options. You need ways to compare rates side by side to make the best decisions. That might be only within your current carrier, because you're bringing ground rates in. It may be even what we find in some clients, it's that they have a really good rate on next day air saver for end of day, and people are making 2-day, 3-day ground shipments when they could have been, in their particular instance, less money through their contract next day at faster delivery. But no one's monitoring that inside their platform and making sure that people are making the right decisions and coming out with change management plans to make those things happen. More and more people are going to be working remotely in the future. We've had 2 years of COVID, right? With Omicron, there's no way people are going back to work, full time in an office in the next few months. And after 2 years of us all working effectively for remotely, does anyone want to go back full time? Most companies are developing remote strategies that will be in existence way into the future with very little plans of moving everybody back into the office all of a sudden. This work from home thing is the reality. It's the future. And a lot of us like it, myself included. So I don't see that changing dramatically in the future. This 2-year experiment that we've been on has really proven that, it's not going to happen. We're not all going back to the office full time. In order to support those remote workers, we need cloud-based tools. They're needed to support their mail and shipping needs. We need to give people the ability to mail and ship in the cloud from enterprise platforms that make this easy. Multi-carrier tools are available to rate shop at the lowest cost to send. This is our #1 strategy that we're going to have to reduce the cost or minimize the impact of these rate increases that are inevitable every year. PC postage, which can be done through some of these multi-carrier tools, it allows us to mail from anywhere with an internet connection and a printer. And it means that not everything has to go overnight, or not everything has to go at the pound rate when it's only a 2-ounce letter. It could go at 73 cents. Enterprise versions are available to manage all your users on a single platform, and all these solutions will create efficiencies and savings. This is the future of mail and parcel. It is not going to be having separate systems, comparing rates across multiple different systems independently. It's going to be having web-based tools working across an enterprise to support the users in the easiest way possible. And in order to do that, there needs to be infrastructure in place to support that. So a little bit about us. We manage the mail and shipping spends for the largest organizations in America. We average 68%, we've done $68 million in savings for our clients. We manage the largest mail equipment and PC postage and shipping-based portfolio in the country with 181,000 pieces of equipment and software under management. Our average client has saved almost $2 million. On the equipment side, which is where we got our start, we averaged 58% on equipment savings. We've recovered over $24 million in lost postage, vendor overcharges, and fees. And the majority of our team has come from the mailing industry, where we have 220 years of experience. We provide comprehensive web dashboard tools to help manage the spend in a centralized way, and time savings and assistance in fleet management. Our clients are every industry. Doesn't make any difference, frankly, what industry someone's from. It just matters that there is a large dispersed organization that has lots of locations and mailing and shipping challenges. Our typical process is we do a no cost or obligation analysis on anything that the client is particularly interested in looking at. We get a letter of authority from them that says we have the ability to review their spends, and we'll get copies of invoices and accounts payable exports and inventory lists of equipment. We work with the current vendors to build population reports, detailed savings analysis, and then we'll present the savings to you for you to decide are these programs that you want to move forward to. And if you do and you sign up with us, then we'll submit the credits and lost postage forms. We'll help negotiate pricing on the mailing side. We'll work on managing the shipping platforms. We'll right size mailing equipment and postage and optimize the postage and shipping spends. We'll present all savings opportunities to you for approval. We don't approve anything. We'll manage the visibility and web dashboards, and then we'll provide ongoing support. And this is, because we find that people need the support is the key item that's really been missing in this area. And people need the ongoing support to make sure that as changes happen, as people have needs, that there's a central place they can go to get that support. So I want to thank everybody for coming to this session. I want to open it up to any questions, and please let us know what you have. Michaela?
Thanks, Adam. Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I wanted to remind you that there are 2 different ways to ask questions. You can either raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can type your question in the chat box. While we wait for some questions to roll in, I do want to point out that Adam's email is listed there if you guys want to get in contact with him and you have any further questions about what you learned today. And then also our various social media links are there as well, so that you can check out This presentation will be on our YouTube, so you can rewatch it if you have anything you want to reference. All right, so it looks like our first question is, what do you see as the biggest area where rate shopping makes sense?
So rate shopping makes sense there's a couple ways. The two biggest that we find are comparing, ground service and comparing the postal service rates against the private carriers. I would say ground is probably the biggest area of opportunity because people don't have to change the carrier service. They're already having that carrier pick up on a daily basis, and being able to optimize the ground makes the most sense. Where we find is the biggest opportunity in that is not just having a tool like a multi-carrier tool, it's having a plan around using that tool and reinforcing that. And so what that means is putting in a tool that can make the ground air to ground comparisons. Then provide education about when people should be using ground, what are the differences, because people automatically don't assume that ground has the same delivery, even if it shows up on the screen. But then 3 is reinforcing that behavior with reporting that is given to leadership with who's not making the right decisions on a package by package basis, so that people know that it's being watched inside your organization and distributed throughout your organization of that information, and then people will start migrating to making those decisions.
All right, it looks like we have another question. What kind of leverage do we have with contract negotiations?
So I sort of see the future of people having less and less leverage with contract negotiations. So and the reason for that is there's only a few suppliers. The suppliers are getting close to capacity of their networks, especially around peak periods, and that they all have peak surcharge rates, as you guys have all probably been seeing. And so there's going to be less and less leverage in contract negotiations. So you have to find what are those avenues. If you have free carrier provided tools, you have much less carrier contract negotiations than you do if you have a system where you can easily either switch at a moment's notice or at least compare lower cost services on a package by package basis. But I see overall as an industry, people having less and less leverage in contract negotiations because the carriers, frankly don't need to. And I think we've seen that over the last 2 years. COVID has really pushed the carriers to a much harder level as far as the challenges of meeting the requirements. And there's been we've seen less discounting that's being offered by carriers, especially in future contracts. So you need to be able to find savings either in the leverage from having multi-carrier platforms, and or looking at service optimization inside your carriers as the best ways to save money.
Alrighty. Well, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. Please fill out the survey that will appear at the conclusion of the webinar, and be sure to check out our social media pages to find helpful information from us on a more frequent basis. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.